Welcome back to What She Said Sports. All right, so we have some unfinished business to discuss where Shedeur Sanders is concerned. And it's not the fact that the What She Said podcast community is only discussing it. This is coming about because the NFL is sneakily trying to move forward through the media, discussing the 2026 too early mock draft. Understand that whatever draft we discuss going forward will bring about conversations about Shedeur Sanders. Why? Because there's unfinished business. There's unfinished business, and you can't expect people, the large number of people who made it possible for Shedeur Sanders to have the number one selling jersey. You can't expect all of those people to just move on. That's not going to happen. What's taking place today on social media platforms? You have X, where a post was going about talking about Carson Schlesinger, who was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and it was discussed how it seems that the fans are questioning how can Carson Schlesinger be named as a day one starter. If anybody coming out of Cleveland is named a day one starter, why isn't it Mason Graham? Why isn't it Shedeur Sanders? Why Carson Schlesinger? Well, understand Carson Schlesinger is also one of the players who in the second round received a guaranteed contract. And as of today, there are still 39 holdouts regarding their contract issues, the rookies that were drafted. So in addition to rookies with unresolved and pending contracts that have not been signed since the draft late April, you have the matter of Shedeur Sanders. Now, we just last week moved past, I guess you could say, an issue where the NFL was found guilty of collusion against veteran quarterbacks. That collusion case is making people look at what happened with Shedeur Sanders and looking at how the NFL conducted business with its veterans, how the teams who were supposed to be competing for talent worked together to pay talent a certain amount of money or to determine where this said talent would go. Lamar Jackson was colluded against in free agency. No team wanted the MVP. But I just saw Josh Allen on a commercial listed as the MVP. Josh Allen was the second best quarterback and was named MVP. Not the best, the second best. That action right there was to tell you how the NFL is choosing to move forward and do business going forward. It's not about being the best. Being the best doesn't get you MVP for the third time. That's your talent. So they're not moving forward and making business decisions based on talent. It's on preference. Josh Allen is the league's preference, which is why preference won the MVP. This is why preference won the MVP instead of the best. And then we move on to Shedeur Sanders in the draft. Shedeur Sanders was the best, but preference got Jackson Dart drafted number 2 instead of Shedeur Sanders. And then there are people who are going to say, well, the NFL can operate its business the way it wants to. If it wants to go about preference rather than talent, it can. Can it? What is the league selling the public? Competitive sports. It's not competitive if you go based off preference, is it? So you can't just throw out the flimsy excuse that they can operate their league the way they want to. No, they can't. That's where the Consumer Protection Act comes in. What did you sell the public that the NFL was? And then let's talk about the reality of what it is. Boomer Esiason told us, made a stark confession that he agreed when the owners decided to take Shedeur Sanders off the board. Then Chris Carter decided he wanted to lend his voice. And the things that Chris Carter said also shed light on the subjective manner in which Shedeur Sanders was devalued, saying he was entitled because he has a line of clothing that says he's legendary. That's his words, not mine. That the league views that as Shedeur Sanders is not dedicated to football. So my question is for Chris Carter, who attacked Shedeur Sanders, then why did the NFL draft Shedeur Sanders if they didn't want to have a quarterback that has his own brand? And let's talk about the other players that have their own brands. Why weren't they devalued? Chris Carter is out of his league. There's some place of vitriol of which he's attacking Shedeur Sanders, and I'm willing to bet it has nothing to do with Shedeur Sanders. Is he upset with his father? Did they play at the same time? I don't know. But the things that Chris Carter said were all subjective. So we have unfinished business. We talked about Boomer Esiason. I believe he may have been subpoenaed. Chris Carter needs to be added to the list because he said he was told that Shedeur was entitled because he has a brand. Chris Carter needs to answer for who told him that. Who was willing to go on the record with Chris Carter and defame Shedeur Sanders? Chris Carter has been proud to tell us what he was told. How Shedeur didn't do well in his interviews. We'd like more information about that, Chris Carter. So now we have Boomer Esiason and Chris Carter giving us inside information on how Shedeur was devalued, why Shedeur was devalued. But see, we can go back to on or before February 20th. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, per Mel Kiper Jr. So before the combine, they did not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. And they're using subjective information such as he's entitled because he has a brand called legendary. So is it that he's acting entitled, or is it that they're looking for something to pin to him because the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, plural, per Mel Kiper Jr.? Should Mel Kiper Jr. be subpoenaed, or should he reveal his NFL insider who told him that? We have unfinished business with Shedeur Sanders. So if you want to bring up any draft, let's go. Because you have to answer for 2025 until you do right by Shedeur Sanders. Chris Carter, so full of vitriol, didn't even stop for 1 second to hold the NFL accountable for how it mismanaged Shedeur Sanders. Decided to be the voice of Melanin to blame a young black man who was the #1 projected quarterback in the draft. The first round projection by the NFL itself. Chris Carter had nothing to say about the NFL's accountability. Neither did Boomer Esiason. Chris Carter vehemently attacked Shedeur Sanders for having a brand, but had nothing to say about the other rookies that have brands. And considering that rookies coming in have NIL, many of them have brands, but only Shedeur Sanders was devalued for it. Why? Because the NFL didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, per Mel Kiper Jr., before the combine. So the question that Chris Carter should be asking himself before he speaks another word of vitriol towards Shedeur Sanders is, why did they draft him? Why did they choose to devalue him? They didn't have to draft him at all. He didn't have to be a part of their draft process. He didn't have to be a target of their defamation campaign. He didn't have to be on anybody's NFL roster. It still doesn't. So why did they draft him if the NFL doesn't want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders? And since we're talking about plural, why did the NFL draft any quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders that they don't want now? Key emphasis on now, 2025. Shame on Chris Carter. He needs to shut his mouth if he's not going to hold the NFL accountable for drafting somebody they don't want. So they drafted him and devalued him and abused him and publicly humiliated him, but they didn't have to draft him at all. Now, did they? Did the NFL have to include Shedeur Sanders in their draft process? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments. So Chris Carter had all of this to say about Shedeur Sanders, but no accountability for the NFL. So what's his agenda? Boomer Esiason with his chest stuck out told us that the NFL colluded against Shedeur and took him off the board. And even though the NFL had Shedeur Sanders' phone number and gave it out to 2,000 people who did not need to know, and it precipitated and made possible a public humiliation stunt calling Shedeur while the Saints are on the clock and providing Shedeur Sanders with inside information. You're going to have to wait a little long. How did the caller know from Ole Miss that Shedeur was going to have to wait? And when that call was concluded, the Saints picked Tyler Shaw. It was all well timed. But Chris Carter has nothing to say about the public humiliation stunt. So he just choosing to not hold the NFL accountable. And Boomer Esiason, with his chest stuck out, told us they colluded and said it as if they are above reproach. Is the NFL above reproach? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments. No, the NFL is not above reproach. Boomer Esiason show acted like he thought he could say that and get away with it. Why? And why did Chris Carter think it was okay to tell us that subjective information was used to devalue Shedeur Sanders because he has a brand called Legendary? I have heard nothing that supports Shedeur Sanders being devalued, but I have one question. If the NFL did want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, prior to the draft, why did they invite him to the combine? Answer it. Chris Carter, Boomer Esiason, answer it. Y'all have so much to say, but what you're not saying is the NFL never had to draft Shedeur Sanders. So why did they? We have unfinished business. So if you want to talk about mock drafts for 2026, I'm not surprised at what it's going to look like. But we're going to talk about 2025 until you do right by Shedeur Sanders. Chris Carter. So maybe somebody ought to add him to the subpoena list. So since he knows so damn much. And he ought to be ashamed of himself, but I'm willing to bet you his vitriol is personal. Y'all want to say it's about Coach Prime? Yeah, with Chris Carter. He clearly has an axe to grind with Coach Prime because he chose to overlook the prank and decided to rip into Shedeur Sanders for having a brand called Legendary. I got news for Chris Carter. I want Shedeur Sanders to start his own 7-on-7 league called 2 Legendary, OT7. Yes. Because why? It's called progress. So what Chris Carter want Shedeur to play football at a time when he did, when players didn't have nothing but a jersey on their damn back and nothing to show for it when they left the league and went broke? He mad because he's coming in wealthy from NIL. I told y'all some of these older players are jealous. They are jealous of people like Shedeur. Some players are jealous of Shedeur because he grew up rich and they had it harder than he did. But they have already found out what Shedeur Sanders said. They gonna get you too. We haven't even gotten to the first preseason game. And we saw how the NFL tried to screw over Travis Hunter with his signing bonus to the point he had to go fishing with Coach Prime to get it. Talk about you can't fake influence. And then down in Tennessee, we got Cam Ward, who came at Shedeur from a place of what people thought was joking, but it didn't seem like it. Who wanted to prove he was the best. He's out here competing for QB1 and he the number 1 pick overall. And he has full guarantee money. And that's still not enough for them to respect him as the best player. Why? Because Lamar Jackson hasn't been respected as the best player. Why would I respect Cam Ward if I don't respect Lamar Jackson? 3-time MVP. But I give it to the second best person. So until you do right by Shedeur Sanders, we're going to be right here. Because it's not just about Shedeur Sanders. Chris Carter, since you know so damn much. This is also about Miro. This is also about Cam Ward. In addition to Shedeur Sanders. So the 2025 draft itself was plagued. It had plans in place because the NFL doesn't want quarterbacks plural like Shedeur Sanders now. Quarterbacks plural, Cam Ward, which is why he's competing for QB1 in a dysfunctional setting with a guy that failed from last year. The NFL does not want quarterbacks now, which is why during the draft process, there was not one mention of Jalen Milroe being a comp. His QB comps are Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. No, they didn't want you to know that. So they didn't talk about Milroe. And they're not talking about him in Seattle. The most they're willing to say is he's buried on the depth chart. He'll never see the field this year. So if the NFL didn't want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now, before the combine, why invite Milroe? Why invite Cam Ward? Why invite Shedeur Sanders? The NFL needed a narrative to shun Shedeur Sanders that would work. So go back to before the combine and start asking real questions. If Mel Kiper Jr. can say on ESPN the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, he was told this by an insider, and then we see Shedeur Sanders being devalued, defamed, assaulted, humiliated, that's your answer. Because the NFL doesn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. So the real question is what? Why did the NFL invite quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders to the 2025 draft? Answer that question. That deserves to be answered. And then we're going to talk about what the remedy should be, because the NFL did not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. But they invited him to the combine. They publicly humiliated Shedeur. They attacked him at the combine. They defamed him. They pushed him down so far out of reach of QB1 by their standards. Because if you can't even pick your own jersey number, if you're the 144th pick, you damn sure can't compete for QB1. So that's why we saw what appears to be a fake competition for QB1. So what is the NFL doing since it doesn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now? Holding them back. Ostracizing them. The real question is, if the NFL didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, why did they draft them? The sham job done on Shedeur before the draft should make anybody question, if you didn't want him, instead of abusing him, why did you draft him? And if you didn't want Cam and you got him competing with the guy that failed, why did you draft him? And if you want Milroe, whose QB comps are Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson, a QB style fans would love to see because it makes for exciting football, why did you draft him? Better yet, if the NFL did not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now, per Mel Kiper Jr., prior to the combine, why invite quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders to the combine? Answer it. And before Chris Carter opens his mouth again, he needs to answer that question. Before he tries to attack Shedeur again, answer that question. And he should be on somebody's subpoena list, since he knows so damn much, but has not nary a word of accountability for the NFL. The NFL should be accountable for drafting quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now, plural, burying them on the depth chart, making them compete when they already won outright, and devaluing Shedeur to number 144 because the NFL knew that it didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now before the combine. That's what needs accountability. You solve that problem and you will solve everything else that took place in the draft, because all of it stems from that damn statement. And it's not just about Shedeur. Chris Carter, what do you have to say about the Tennessee Titans, who needed a quarterback and didn't want to even use that pick for a quarterback? They didn't even want to get Cam until the last minute, and likely to cover for the fact that they were discriminating against Shedeur, Milroe, and Cam. So what does Chris Carter have to say about that? What does Chris Carter have to say about Jalen Milroe being buried on the depth chart and nobody even talking about him in the draft and trying to hide the fact from the fans that this young man would bring an exciting style of play? Because fans would love to see one person who can exemplify Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. But you didn't get to hear about that. No, they sold you what they wanted to sell you, a damn lie about Shedeur. And in the season, as they're getting ready, they are hiding Milroe and Cam Ward. So until you do right by Shedeur, the question remains and accountability needs to be for why in the hell did the NFL draft Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, or Cam Ward if the NFL knew before the damn combine the NFL does not want quarterbacks plural like Shedeur Sanders? It might explain to you why instead of drafting Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe, they drafted Jackson Dart and Tyler Shaw. Two head scratchers. It's simple. And we don't need to overlook the obvious. Do we need to state the obvious? All you got to do is ask, why did NFL not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders, plural, now, 2025? Why? The answer is out there. I have stated it multiple times. People want to move forward. No. We're going to be right here. You talk about the 2026 draft, we're going to talk about the 2025 draft because there's been no accountability. Just consistent and persistent attacks on Shedeur Sanders while y'all not realizing that they hiding Milroe just like they did in the draft and they making Cam compete for his number one overall pick even though they needed a quarterback. Why draft Cam and make him compete with the guy that failed? Answer it. Those are the things that Chris Carter should be talking about. But it sounds like he got an axe to grind. And it sounds like he's willing to support defamation. So send him a damn subpoena too, since he knows so damn much. He is quoted with saying, Shedeur Sanders has a brand and that's the problem. You know what the problem is? His melanin. That's the problem. And it's not just Shedeur Sanders' melanin. It's Jalen Milroe's melanin and it's Cam Ward's melanin. Because this year, since the NFL didn't want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders, plural, now in 2025, they didn't want none of them to excel to QB1. That's what this is about. Because why? In 2024, 15 black quarterbacks started the season. In 2025, it should be 16, 17, and 18, which gives black quarterbacks who are starters the majority of the starting quarterbacks. And my question is, why the hell doesn't the NFL want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now? What's wrong with the majority of your starting quarterbacks being black? You had to know it was going to happen one day. The day you chose a black player for his athleticism, there was no turning back. That eventually we would get here, despite the odds and the hurdles put in these black quarterbacks' ways. This is about melanin. This is about the optics of having two black quarterbacks play in primetime game week after week after week after week. So they holding back Milroe, they holding back Cam, and they holding back Shedeur, all from QB1, because they will become the majority. And then you will see the majority of the games will be led by two quarterbacks. And then eventually and consistently, four players coming out of the NFC and AFC, four quarterbacks will be black. Then consistently going forward, you will see two black quarterbacks vying for the Super Bowl. Consistently. So Chris Carter gonna talk about Shedeur. He better talk about holding the NFL accountable or shut the hell up. But somebody needs to add him to a subpoena list. This is about melanin. And it ain't just the NFL. Somebody said it today. Shedeur Sanders is Angel Reese of the WNBA. Facts. I said that a year ago. And what's happening now? Angel Reese is balling out. She was balling out last year, right? Well, guess what? She's the defensive leader in the WNBA. Nafessa Collier, Angel Reese, and Asia Wilson are leading the WNBA. But you know what I heard when the Dallas Wings played the Fever? You know what I heard? I heard about Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is essentially Josh Allen of the NFL. She's not their best player, but she's the one they want to talk about. And we were talking the other day, and somebody threw out a name of a young man that just got drafted to the NBA. What was his name? I think he might be going to Utah. I have been paying attention to the NBA because I learned that it's not about winning for them. So imagine all your favorite sports, where your favorite players, Shedeur Sanders, Angel Reese, pick one in the NBA. Deontay Murray are all being held back. So somebody else could be seen. So when Chris Carter, before he utters another word, he might need to turn off his damn tunnel vision and look at what's happening across 3 leagues that are dominated by melanin and see how they holding back and don't want the face to be melanated. They okay with ambiguously melanated, but I mean full on melanated and proud to be black. So we have unfinished business in the NFL draft. As it pertains to the matter of Shedeur Sanders. And now you see how the NFL colluded against veteran quarterbacks and essentially makes it impossible for them to get any kind of justice. So what should the remedy be in the matter of Shedeur Sanders, since the NFL didn't want quarterbacks plural like Shedeur Sanders now in the 2025 draft, but drafted him anyway and chose to ostracize him, devalue him, humiliate him, gang up on him, abuse him, making Cam compete for QB1, hiding Milrow on the depth chart? What should be the remedy? That's my question. Yes, we have unfinished business. Yes, the NFL colluded. What should be the remedy? Because we know it's not players filing a grievance with the NFL Players Association. We know it's not about the media keeping it a buck and holding the NFL accountable. What should be the remedy? Since the NFL knew, per Mel Kiper Jr., an NFL insider told him, and we can narrow it down to who it is, that the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. If you could go on ESPN and say that, you feel confident in your NFL informant. And since that's what was stated before the combine, what is the remedy for knowing that the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now? Quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. That kind of quarterback. I don't want your kind around here. Now that you know the NFL Players Association is not the avenue. The media is not the avenue for accountability. What is the remedy for taking and drafting and destroying these young men? What's the remedy? Good evening, everybody. Let me know your thoughts. It said the article today said Deshaun Watson's mentoring Shedeur and Dylan. However, the headline only says Shedeur. More media trickery. Right. You know the media is not the remedy. So what is the remedy? Thank you for that, Happy Day. Thank you. Kay Hayes, how you doing? It says Chris is a certified hater in NFL. Yes, boy, that's obvious. But he made himself look like a fool for going on the record to be quoted and saying that Shedeur Sanders, they think he's too entitled because he has his own brand. when he's not the only one to have his own brand. The age of NIL dictates a lot of them are coming with their brand. So what is the remedy for the accountability against Chris Carter and the NFL? Yes, they are jealous of Shedeur. This is from Val C. They are jealous of Shedeur, especially the veteran players. Yeah, some of them are. I do agree with that. See, I asked the question when Cam Ward was unjustly attacking Shedeur Sanders. I asked the question, is this about NIL? Is he jealous because Shedeur is coming through with millions? And he finally moved away from that. And his woman, congratulations, they having a baby, called him out and said, I think you might be being a little too hard on Shedeur. And he been eased off ever since. And I thought it was great that he spoke to the stress that he endured after his grandmother died and how he was almost into two accidents during that time. Cam was one of the few people to admit and acknowledge and discuss publicly that all of the stress and everything else that Shedeur had to endure. And the list is long: defamation, humiliation, public humiliation, an orchestrated attack against him. His father used as a scapegoat and how that negatively affected his own father's health, which is weighing on Shedeur as well. Being in a toxic environment in Cleveland, having reporters, allowing reporters to antagonize him unjustly, asking other players about Shedeur. There are 50, what, how many rookies? 7 drafted, 13 unsigned or signed? Why you don't ask about those players? They are targeting Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland. What is the remedy? We know it's not the NFL Players Association. We know it's not the media. Hey, Salafi, how you doing? 17 to 32. That's it. Ghost of Nessa, that's it. That's exactly the problem. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now because they don't want 17 of their starting quarterbacks to be black. 17 of 32, which give black quarterbacks the majority. Prove me wrong. There's only one reason why you hired Miro. There's only another reason, the same reason why you making Cam Ward the number 1 overall pick compete for his QB1 spot all of a sudden with the guy that failed because they got away with it, giving the number 2 quarterback based on preference Josh Allen MVP. So they tried it again in the draft and gave Jackson Dart the number 2 quarterback taken in the draft because of preference. The media is not going to hold the NFL accountable. You should see that by now. And even with the truth coming out about collusion, you see the NFL Players Association is not going to hold the NFL accountable. And Boomer Esiason spoke up with his chest out like he know the NFL is not going to be held accountable. Somebody asked the question today, why doesn't somebody just file a lawsuit and post it? I'm like, you got to get a lawyer to take the case first. Didn't Eric Jackson tell us that he's working with several law firms to take the case? The case is a slam dunk. They should be lining up. But I'm sure they're waiting to see what happens next, as are a lot of other people. So it's not as simple as you think it is because what you're learning is the media, the NFL Players Association, some lawyers, and likely some judges too. Not barreling 100 miles an hour down the road for accountability for the NFL. So what's the remedy? If I was Shedeur, I would sue and play in another league. I think so. The players can't use the NFL Players Association, but they do have a collective voice. But they have been trained to be individuals. Look at Chris Carter. Chris Carter is a prime example of why the players are not going to come together. He proudly sports that he has a yellow jacket that he may or may not have had to pay for. He's proud, right, to be a part of a league that we know has a very destructive history when it comes to NFL quarterbacks. Or does he want us to believe? Does Chris Carter want us to believe he don't know what took place with NFL quarterbacks, the black ones, because he's a wide receiver? He has an axe to grind. So he should think twice before he open up his mouth again to attack Shedeur instead of holding the NFL accountable with his gold jacket. Because black QBs will become dominant at the position and they don't want to lead that is led by a majority black QBs. That's it, Gracie. That is exactly why. See, this not just about Shedeur, but there is the matter of Shedeur in the draft. The most extreme case of trying to hold back a quarterback. And now, as they are trying to get ready for the season, you see it with Cam. See, you couldn't see it in the draft with Cam. People said to me, you can't say it's racism because they drafted Cam. Well, you can say it now. Because why is he competing? I said it then. Having one black friend does not mean you're not racist. And that conversation has stopped. The attacks on Shedeur Sanders continue. This just is not just about Shedeur. This about Cam competing with the guy that failed and having to earn his spot as QB1 all of a sudden. He's in a dysfunctional environment. Shedeur Sanders is in a toxic environment. And since they believe they successfully buried Milroe on the depth chart in Seattle, I don't know what kind of environment Milroe's in because we don't hear about it. Because they think, oh, we won't see him this season. So that leads me to Angel Reese. So we in her what? Second year, right? We saw how tumultuous year one was with her having vitriol hurled at her from one particular fan base. All the people that were drafted in the WNBA last year, only one player's fan base attacked Angel Reese. So she made it through last year after dealing with vitriol after LSU, her first season. She out here killing it. She stayed, but she also has another option that makes it easier for her to deal with and ignore the NBA. The WNBA is not Angel Reese's only option. She plays with Unrivaled and had a successful season there. No vitriol. Allowed to just ball out and be her. And you can see that in her play. She's unstoppable right now. She don't hear nothing they're saying. Whether they want to, you can't deny her. 70 rebounds in the last 4 games. Where's their preference? Injured. Truly injured or injured because they were losing. The Fever was losing. Kelsey Mitchell, the best guard on the team, gave them their 8-8. What's going to happen? Is Kelsey Mitchell going to keep leading the way and they're going to turn it back over to Caitlin? I like Caitlin. She cool, but Caitlin know that she ain't the best person on the team. She's fully aware of that. People thought her fans would hate on her because she said the WNBA was founded on the backs of black women. Right. And the NFL has been exciting because of the exciting play stemming from the talent of black players, in particular, black quarterbacks. What they like about Pat Mahomes is exactly who Shedeur Sanders is, the ability to extend plays. So why shun Shedeur Sanders? Timing. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. So when Shedeur Sanders gets to year 2, because he signed his contract, is it going to be like it is in the WNBA with Angel Reese? because they not talking about somebody else because of injuries. Mm-mm. First, he got to get the opportunity to shine. And that's what they holding him back from. Making him compete in a fake competition that they already determined they weren't going to let him start. Who was that to satisfy? Whoever it was, they hold the remedy to accountability in Cleveland. It's not the media. It's not the NFL Players Association. They can't even help the 39 rookies that are still holding out. So they're a lame duck. Just like I said before this collusion document came down. So what you saw with Angel Reese in year one, all of the hatred and vitriol is what you're seeing towards Shedeur, starting with the draft. But see, unlike the WNBA, who I don't recall being on the record, somebody sharing the message that the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. Quarterbacks plural now, 2025, 17 to 32. So since that came from Mel Kiper Jr., by way of an NFL insider, should the NFL insider be made to answer questions? Should they be exposed? I think so. Because that holds the key to all of this. When did Shedeur exactly become entitled? When did you have a problem with his brand? Shedeur Sanders was at the NFL celebrity game by way of invitation to play. But of course, he didn't play just like he didn't play in the Shrine Bowl because what were people saying at the time? He's going to play in the NFL celebrity game, but he couldn't play in the Shrine Bowl. There are people mad that he didn't go to the Senior Bowl. I didn't even know he got an invite to the Senior Bowl. But nobody's talking about how he stayed even though he didn't work out. And that's another thing Chris Carter had to attack Shedeur about. He didn't work out at the combine. How you know how many people don't work out at the combine? Travis didn't work out at the combine. Cam Ward didn't work out at the combine. I didn't see Cam at the Shrine Bowl. I didn't see him out there on the field. So why is Shedeur being targeted? Because he's number 17. They getting the other two after the draft. Miro being buried. Cam Ward competing with the guy that failed in dysfunction. They getting it now. Travis already see they was gonna screw him over like everybody else, but he was supposed to be so different. And who did it take? It took Travis to go fishing with Coach Prime and for it to go viral. And on a Sunday afternoon, his contract is done. But the other 39 are not. Can't fake influence. So that's who also holds the remedy to the matter of Shedeur Sanders in the 2025 draft. Coach Prime. Chris Carter always been a hater. Yeah, he clearly got some issue. He trying to be accepted like a pick me. That's the term they use. Forced the trade from the Eagles because he didn't want to catch for Randall Cunningham. Didn't want the Vikings to draft Randy Moss. Always been jealous of Prime. You can see it because what he said makes no sense. In fact, Chris Carter and Boomer Esiason told us how the NFL conduct business. I know a lot of people felt like he was entitled. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that they weren't judging his talent. Thank you for letting me know that they were using suggestive information as an excuse to live out what the NFL insider told Mel Kiper Jr. before the combine. The NFL does not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. That is the crux of this entire situation. And the question for the NFL is, why did you invite them to the combine? Why did you invite them to be a part of your draft process? Notice I didn't say Shedeur. I said them. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. Look at how Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, and Cam Ward have been treated up to 5:53 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 6/30 of 2025. And their treatment or mistreatment supports that statement. The NFL does not want quarterbacks, plural, like Shedeur Sanders now. Just look at the entire scenario. Chris Carter clearly has tunnel vision. And Boomer Esiason is the entitled one who thought, telling us that they colluded against Shedeur Sanders by taking him off the board meant that they were above reproach and there's nothing anybody, anyone, or the one can do about it. So that's it. The NFL has a question to answer. A few questions pertaining to the statement the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. Unfinished business. Chris Carter is an assistant coach for who? Just a matter of time before he wears out his welcome running his mouth. FAU. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Isn't that where Willie Taggart left from and went to the Ravens and Chris Carter is there? Okay. That's interesting because how can you be a college coach, but then you want to talk down players that look like you? You have a history of not wanting to catch from black quarterbacks. Why should you be entrusted with the next generation? You shouldn't. Shedeur was under treatment after the season. Shedeur played in the Alamo Bowl while others set out. Yep, a lot. Matter of fact, what did Coach Prime say? Who said that? Wild dog. Facts. Coach Prime said, no, we're playing. A lot of other players didn't play. People mad at Cam because he didn't finish the game in Miami. Did it hold back his number one overall draft pick? No. You think that's why they are making Cam compete with Will Levis? No. The point is, it didn't have any effect. Will it have? What's the name? Retzloff, who's under what, a 7-game suspension for misconduct? Will it have what? Will it have an effect on his draft stock? Did it have an effect on Johnny Manziel's draft stock? Did Trevor Lawrence, was his draft stock negated because he said out of his own mouth, the NFL is not the end all to be all for him. But it affected Shedeur Sanders. But it didn't affect anybody else, only Shedeur Sanders because he was targeted. He was supposed to go at least to 2 teams in the top 5, and they both are problematic. Cleveland, who a lot of people didn't even have Shedeur in a mock draft to Cleveland, but Cleveland was the team that pre-draft extensively with him. And the Giants, who have never had a black starting quarterback, is seeming like right now they're trying to get out of it. I told y'all they was playing in Russell Wilson face. This is about black quarterbacks. It's a collaborative effort to hold back black quarterbacks. Definitely don't want them to be the face of the league. And the first action, you can see it. We heard about it before the combine. Mel Kiper Jr., according to an NFL insider, told him the NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. That's going back to February before the combine. Then MVP given to Lamar Jackson, taken from Lamar Jackson. People even changed their votes so Josh Allen could win. And he happily accepts the award, knowing he's second best, and robbed Lamar Jackson of the MVP. Again, Lamar Jackson has been colluded against 3 times. And now we got the 2025 class. And we see the way they're being held back. It don't matter what you use to hold them back. Whether it's defamation or you make them compete like Cam in Tennessee, even though he's already the best. Or you don't even talk about Milroe, act like you don't want to see him because you definitely don't want the fans to learn that his QB comps are 2 of the most exciting players the NFL has seen since the late 90s. Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. When you look at all of it, instead of having tunnel vision, you go back to the statement. The NFL does not want quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now. And that's what the NFL should be held accountable for. Why? What's wrong with quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now? Chris Carter got passed over 6 times in the Hall of Fame voting before finally getting in. Yeah, he's a pick me. He's clearly a pick me, and thank you for sharing that. They and he paid to get in. I'm willing to bet you he got passed over 6 times and you had to pay. I bet you, even if you willing to pay and they passed over you 6 times, and then you gonna go out here and attack this young man because you don't want to see him make it because it was harder for you, so you gonna make it harder for him. Sambo. That's what that is. Let the NFL suffer with poor QB play. That's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen because you see all of the remedies that people would think. The NFL Players Association, the fans, courts. That ain't gonna work. It's gonna have to be what's working for Angel Reese. And what is that? She rose to the top based off her talent. Angel Reese is leading defense and rebounds. She has like 12.9 average per game. The second person isn't even close. They're like at 9. And then offense and defense is Nafessa Collier and Angel Reese. Angel Reese just played for Unrivaled Basketball, co-founded by who? Nafessa Collier. You think it's a coincidence that those two are leading? No. It shows you when mentally you're happy and you're getting a chance to do what you need to do. Nobody else can hold you back. So the remedy is unrivaled basketball, but of football. Not a coincidence. Leading offense and defense are two unrivaled players. Angel Reese and the Professor Collier co-founder. That's the remedy. That's the remedy. Start your own league. And then when you in the NFL, you ain't gonna care. You just gonna get out there and play. The Super Bowl is no longer important. The foolishness to hold you back is no longer important because they can't, because you get to shine somewhere else. That's the remedy. I'm proud of Angel. Angel playing like nobody watching, and she just out here balling. See, last year, she hadn't gone to Unrivaled yet. But now that she's had a season with them and she was able to shine without being held back in the vitriol, she was free of mind to let her talent shine. There's nothing the WNBA can do to her because they second. That's just an obligation, a contractual obligation. Unrivaled set themselves up to give their players somewhere else so they can be respected as human beings and play the game that they love without being oppressed. That's the remedy. Pat Mahomes is what? Right. Pat Mahomes. And you see, he went and cut his hair after the Super Bowl. That's correct, Wild Dog. Pat Mahomes, they like him because he's ambiguous, ambiguously black. I don't know how people could say that. Maybe because I know who his father is. I'm like, the man is black. You would see that. But, it comes down to this passing type of philosophy that also, like race norming, comes off of what? Out of the era of plantations. Passing the brown paper bag test. You can't be darker than this paper bag for me to hold you up. You married to a white woman, so okay, you denouncing your blackness. That's how they look at it. That ain't how we look at it. There's white women at the cookout all the time with my black uncles and they black uncles, and we see it all the time. They don't. We don't care. Can she play spades? Okay. Yeah, it definitely radiated Sambo energy. Yup. More Texas QBs are coming up. More of the best programs have black head coaches and QBs. Okay. So we're going to obviously be watching college football for sure. College football is my escape from the NFL and all of this uh, racism, because that's what it is. It's not foolishness, it's racism. And you don't need to be, in my opinion, politically correct about it, because call it what it is. And that's the problem, the lack of accountability. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have saved women's basketball. I agree. This incoming class, the way it should have been played when Angel came in, see, they pushed Angel down. All you got to do is look at what's happening in the WNBA and Angel Reese, year one and year two, and then look at Shedeur. And it's going to tell you what the remedy is. Another league. That's the remedy. Angel Reese is out here balling. And they want to hate on her so bad. But if it wasn't for her, who you going to talk about next? Kelsey Mitchell? What I heard during the Dallas game, one reporter said it. Kelsey Mitchell deserves her flowers. That's the baller in Indiana. But they want a Josh Allen, Caitlin Clark. That's all it is. Well, it's who we want it to be. That's why there needs to be another league. So let them have what they want. Take your ball and go home. Start your own league. That is the remedy. Because none of these other options are going to work. They might be successful, but it doesn't mean it's going to change their behavior. It was said during Unrivaled season that the WNBA was hating on Unrivaled because they didn't want it to work. And yet they still here. First year made 25 million. Players have equity, minimum salary, 6 figures. That's better than the WNBA. And that's why Angel Reese playing so freely. Because she have somewhere else to shine. She's not held back. So that's the remedy. Your own league. Can she play spades? That's all I care about. Can she play spades or is she gonna mess it up the whole damn game? That's all I care about. That's all that's all we care about. That's all we care about. But this was good, guys. We right at about 57 minutes. We will be back. Um, we'll definitely be back tonight. Don't know what we're gonna talk about yet. Because I can tell you, I already had a schedule for the day and I've already called the audible. That's just how it goes, right? I talk about what needs to be said, right? What needs to be discussed. You know, I can go back and look in the collusion document all day long. But let me tell you something. We know the NFL Players Association is not a remedy for players. So there's really nothing else for me to look at other than to entertain us. And I'd rather spend my time being entertained in a different manner. I'd rather sit here and we play spades or we play, the game, right? So, just talking about things that are that nobody gonna do nothing about is not my cup of tea. That's what that's what the card said. That's just not my cup of tea. So we'll be back tonight. This was good, right? The remedy, we know what it is, we know what the problem is. What we also know is what the NFL needs to be accountable for. Drafting quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders now that the NFL doesn't want and mistreating them, holding them back, burying them on the depth chart, playing keep away with the QB1 spot for the most talented. All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching What She Said Sports. We'll be back tonight. I appreciate the engagement. This was awesome. I'll see y'all later. Thank you for watching What She Said Sports. Be sure to join our daily live stream and listen up to What She Said Sports on the go on Spotify. Thank you for watching What She Said Sports. Stay for another video.